Pop-O-Holics, show about hot takes hotter than hot, tasty pancakes for the weekly upload. What date is it for? I've got it written down somewhere. 4/18, April 18th, 2022, 2022. My goodness, we're in the future. This is the kind of dates that they had back in the 80s for when we're going to have flying cars and whatnot. And we don't got none of that, so I feel kind of cheated. I was born in the wrong time. I'm your host, Christian Katie.
Foghorn Leghorn.
I was going to say, sounds like Foghorn Leghorn.
I say, I haven't introduced you yet. My name is Christian Katie. I'm the host of Pop-O-Holics, and I'm joined, as always, by my two best friends.
Chris Conkling.
And Brian Dupree, safely on solid ground here. Mike
made it
officially again.
We have a microphone again. Yes, that microphone is a microphone I got in college. And hey, it's still being used to this day. Samson. I was way off. Great use, great use of old technology. Keep it around. Anyway, what is
Lasts
this week?
Forever.
I love it. I think it was only $100 too. So quite a.
You got your money's worth.
Yeah, I'm telling you what. This mic was way more expensive, and I've only been using it for like a year or so. So got a long way to pay you off. Anyway, what is Pop-O-Holics? Well, we just chit chat about nothing. We do things a bit different around here.
Oh, God. Brian and I killed it. Don't resurrect it.
I say, I've come back from the grave. Here on the Pop-O-Holics, we try to take a look at pop culture and have a little fun while we do it. And we have our main topic episodes. Those are every Wednesday. Easter Eggers month is this month, so we're talking all things by Robbie Eggies, as I call him, Robert Egerton. Robert Eggers. I'm gonna actually forget his name by doing all this shit.
The Northman, directed by Robert Eggies.
Robbie
Eggies.
Robert Eggers will be referred to as Robbie Eggies by me. Anyway, so we're covering all his films. We covered The Witch, in case you're interested in his first film. We discussed that with the wonderful Susan Tucker-Glinska on last week's episode. And we have the Lighthouse coming up, as well as our review of The Northman in a couple weeks. Very exciting stuff. But this is a weekly upload. On the weekly upload, we try to keep it topical. Topical culture. Cultural.
Topical culture.
Pop-O-Holics.
I'm quitting.
Top culture.
I don't know I have no idea what I'm doing with my mouth right now. That's what she said. Weekly upload. We try to be topical. So we talk about the, that's what she said jokes. They're so 2022. They're relevant. They're still funny. They're not problematic. Anyway, we talk about the latest news in pop culture. Brian brings us the Wacky News Corner. We talk about what we've been doing individually outside of the main review, our main little book club we have. We talk about the individual things. I mostly talk about video games, but sometimes I have a TV show in there. We got a lot of interesting things. You saw Sonic the Hedgehog. Chris, we'll be talking about that later. And Brian, you got some indie art house stuff. What you got down here? Let me see. You got You Won't Be Alone. Pff, never heard of it. And The Conversation. Pff, never heard of it. So Brian's going to bring us those indie scraps, as I call them. I don't know. Maybe these are famous films, and I'm just The
Conversation is Coppola's movie after The Godfather. Very well known, but I had not seen it. So.
Can I give an opinion about Coppola real quick? Overrated. You make one masterpiece. You make one masterpiece. No.
Can I also?
Or like Apocalypse Now.
We haven't even got to the first section, Chris.
This is an incredibly nerdy thing. It is. I'm pretty sure, and I've heard him say it is pronounced Coppola.
Coppola.
That's how he pronounces it.
Well,
that's all I'm gonna say.
We're gonna see how Brian Coppola'd with The Conversation. And then we got community feedback. So let's jump into the first section, like we always do, with Brian's Wacky News Corner.
Welcome back, everyone. We talked about this sometime last year when it was first announced that Kids in the Hall was getting a reboot. So after its original run from 1989 to 1995 on CBC and HBO, it's a Canadian show. It's coming back to Prime Video for a new reboot series. So this is a sketch group, sketch comedy made up of Dave Foley, Bruce McCulloch, Kevin McDonald, Mark McKinney, and Scott Thompson. After the original run of the show, they also made a movie called Brain Candy. It was 105 episodes, the original run. Beloved kind of staple sketch comedy. Was a little bit before our generation, although I think you guys were into it a bit more than me in terms of the comedy stuff. The trailer for this looks really funny, very much poking fun at Amazon itself while trying to play with this idea of them not wanting them to do hot button topics. So it seems like it could be interesting in that regard, some meta comedy there. What do you guys' history with Kids in the Hall, and are you looking forward to this reboot?
Brian, it feels like it's been an eternity since we first talked about this show coming back.
It may have
You
been
said it was only
2020.
last year that we talked about it?
It could have been 2020. Yeah, okay. The news was originally broke in 2020. So
I feel like I've lived several lifetimes since I was like, a Kids in the Hall revival. I'm so excited, you know? And now it's finally happening. I'm so glad that we finally got a trailer. I used to watch the show on Comedy Central when Comedy Central bought the rights to it and started airing reruns for the Kids in the Hall. I'm a fan of all of these comedians. And based on the trailer, it looks like we're getting a lot of new stuff, which I'm happy about, but we're also getting a lot of their recurring characters from the old show coming back, which is going to be really funny. It's going to be bizarre and I think fun to watch these comedians perform these characters several decades after the fact. You know, they've done so much since then. But I cannot wait to watch this show. And like you mentioned, they're poking a little bit of fun at the people that are actually helping with the revival, Amazon. And I think that kind of meta contextual humor is going to be a blast. So yeah, I'm ready for this show. Christian, how do you feel about the revival?
Kids in the Hall, more like old men in the hall. Am I right?
Right.
Is that the same joke that you used 2 years ago when we announced the revival, when we talked about it?
I'm a broken record. It's very possible. I was always more of
It's 2 years. It's fair.
You know, I'm glad for all these revivals. Maybe I'll actually like it this time because I've gone back and watched some Kids in the Hall. And Chris, you may know this. I'm not the biggest fan of Kids in the Hall.
I know you prefer the state.
Oh, yeah. I'm a state boy. And, you know, those creators went on to do a lot more things than the Kids in the Hall creators, as is marked by my understanding of their talent as comedians and sketch artists. That being said, you know, things age well, like wine and potentially this comedy. So we'll see. I won't understand many of the references, and maybe they'll bring back that same sense of humor in a new generation. For a new generation, in a new generation, in a new era. I'm hopeful. I will definitely check out at least a recommended sketch that you sent to me, Chris.
Okay.
Maybe a full episode.
At least one.
We'll see.
So yeah, that's Kids in the Hall getting a nearly 2 decades later reboot, and it's coming to Prime Video on May 13th. So the trailer and a Red Band trailer, which Chris just told us about off mic, is out now. So check that out. Moving on. We have a new archival footage documentary. So the first documentary authorized by the David Bowie estate is in the works and going to be premiering at Cannes this year, very, very soon. It just got announced. So this is helmed by Brett Morgan, who was the director behind Kurt Cobain, Montage of Heck, Jane, and The Kid Stays in the Picture, and will eventually be coming to HBO and HBO Max in 2023 at some point. This Morgan was given unfiltered access to Bowie's personal archives and unearthed hundreds of hours of never before seen 35 millimeter and 16 millimeter footage with a bunch of performances in the original masters. Apparently, there's going to be some 48 compositions from David Bowie throughout the course of this, as well as live footage. It's being described as a feature-length experiential cinematic odyssey that explores Bowie's creative, musical, and spiritual journey. I don't know if you guys are big fans of Bowie. I know a lot of people from our generation probably know him as much from some of his acting performances, whether it be in Labyrinth or something like, I think my first introduction to him and knowing who he was in Zoolander. Are you ready for this?
The Prestige?
Oh, he's great in The Prestige as well. I definitely saw him in Zoolander.
I saw him in Zoolander too, yeah.
I only really got into his music much later, like late high school, college time, and did a deep dive at some point. And obviously, he's got ridiculous amounts of stuff that's incredible and iconic, even up till the day he died, really. His last album that he put out is really great. Black Star, I think it was called, when he was suffering from cancer. Are you guys fans of Bowie? I know we've all watched a little bit of Get Back, at least. I watched all 8+ hours of it and really enjoyed that. The Beatles documentary is a similar situation that Peter Jackson did. Are you guys excited for something to deep dive into Bowie?
Christian, since it's music, I'll let you go first on this one.
I don't love David Bowie, and I know many people that are huge fans. A lot of my friends and fellow musicians just think David Bowie is one of the greatest musicians of all time, like pop musicians. I think that he's certainly prolific and has influenced myriads of genres and all sorts of stuff, but I don't.
He's certainly made a lot.
He made music, undeniable.
Music was made.
I haven't listened to any of it, but the fact that he made it is, I respect that.
I respect
So
that.
call back to
Yes,
Zoolander reference.
Zoolander. Excellent.
No, I just am personally not a huge fan of David Bowie. There's a lot of his songs that I do like. I like the one about him talking like he's a spaceman. That might be more than one, but Ziggy Stardust is another one. I like those tracks. Those are good. Rocket Man. That's Elton John.
Oh my God.
No, and Labyrinth. There's a lot of Bowie crotch. I don't know, just not my vibe. But
That's true.
I actually am more interested in something like this, where it can maybe put together a lot of archival footage that tells his story in a really unique way. That I would be more interested. I'm more interested in his career than I am in his influence than I am his actual music. So I am not interested in something like this. I love watching. Anything that gives you more information about a musical culture and stuff like that. So I'm actually more excited about this than I was his final album, which I did listen to and I did not like, but God bless him and rest in peace. Huge inspiration and impact on both music and cinema. And most importantly, I think music culture. I think he was a very openly, I would say if David Bowie was born today, he would probably identify as like non-gendered. You know, he kind of had this energy to him that was transcendent of that kind of stuff. So I think he was really a pioneer in that regard. So for that, huge respect to Bowie. And I'm really interested in this. Chris, what are your thoughts?
I'm a fan of David Bowie, but I'm not a David Bowie super fan. I went through a bit of a David Bowie phase in high school, but yeah, I'm interested in this documentary. I liked Get Back. I think it's always fun and interesting when we can see footage from artists that otherwise has yet to be seen so far. So I'm definitely interested in checking this out.
So yeah, that is the documentary titled Moonage Daydream, which I don't think I said that. Will hopefully be widely available sometime next year. I'm not sure if it's going to get a theatrical release or not. I think it will before going to HBO. So hopefully that'll come maybe even later this year. But premiering at Cannes this year. So coming out soon. Moving into some stuff that's coming out this week, this Monday. And I felt obliged to talk about this, even though I've only seen a season and a half of Breaking Bad, which is blasphemy to some people who, acknowledge it as one of the greatest shows of all time.
Brian, you're not alone, because I haven't seen all of Breaking Bad either. Maybe you and I should start a Breaking Bad podcast where we go back and watch all of Breaking Bad.
What I've learned, Brian, is once a TV show is at a certain height of popularity and critical acclaim, you refuse to watch it. I'm talking about
Honest
Chernobyl.
Someone also hasn't seen Game of Thrones.
Chernobyl. You can skip that. Chernobyl, The Wire, and recently Station 11, which I named my favorite TV show. I heaped so much praise on that show, and you're like, never gonna see it.
I'm halfway through that show.
Oh,
it's incredible. It's incredible. I'm watching it. I'm watching it with a friend, so we're taking it slow, but
yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, I'm loving it.
Station 11. Oh, yeah.
I
can't wait to talk to you about it. I can't wait to talk to you. Anyway, continue.
I'll definitely be talking about it once we finish for sure. So the last season 6 of Better Call Saul is starting this Monday, premiering this Monday on AMC. So it's going to be broken into 2 separate seasons, 13 episodes total. And the second one is coming out in July. So starting Monday, April 18th, and then the second half will start on July 11th. So we'll be finishing this year. This is the spinoff series from Breaking Bad, as I previously mentioned, created by Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould. Set primarily in the early to middle part of the 2000s in Albuquerque, New Mexico, it develops Jimmy McGill, played by Bob Odenkirk, an earnest lawyer and former con artist, into an egocentric criminal defense attorney known as Saul Goodman, who is a character that was introduced in Breaking Bad. And this is kind of his backstory. And from what I understand about this show, I think people think this is as good as Breaking Bad. I've heard nothing but rave reviews about this, but it kind of compounds onto me never going to watch. There's like 6 or 7 seasons of Breaking Bad.
Now there's even more content that you have to consume.
It's like, my goodness. But from what I've heard, there were some big announcements this past week that I'm not going to get into. They're kind of spoilery about what's going to happen in this last season, although it's a little unclear how that's going to play out. But yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to Better Call Saul that's premiering on AMC this Monday. Christian, you said you had watched a little bit of the show.
Yeah, I've seen all of Breaking Bad, and Breaking Bad is very good. I don't know if in the context of all the great TV shows that have come out, that if it seems as good, because it really was good in a time when TV shows just weren't that good. Sure. But I've gone back and rewatched the first season of Breaking Bad. I think it's still enjoyable if you ever want to revisit it. Better Call Saul is interesting because you don't really need to have watched Breaking Bad for what I've seen in the first season. I'm pretty sure almost the entire first season. And I'm really sad that I haven't picked it back up. I think it's the dauntingness of 6 seasons, but it's I could say without a doubt, because most critics have said it takes a while to get its footing. And I'm like, from only seeing parts in the first season, I'm like, it's as good, if not better, than Breaking Bad. And Bob Odenkirk is incredible in it. And I'm really like, it's people getting all hyped about seeing this last season. I'm like, man, I just haven't kept up. That's just a lot of TV to watch. That's like episodic that my fiance is not like caught up on. So that'd be really hard to do for that much TV. But very excited for people to see this, and it may be a reason for me to finally go, okay, there's a definitive ending. If critics say it's amazing, I'm probably going to try to squeeze it in over this year.
Brian, I already have the name of our podcast, so this is definitely happening. What do you think of Breaking Pod? For our Breaking Bad recap show.
What about Bad Chemistry?
It's locked in.
Bad Chemistry.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good, too. Okay.
Are you insinuating that Brian and I have bad chemistry?
Do you know what the actual...
And for the last 8 weeks have run the show into the ground, Christian?
All right. There's like a slew of Breaking Bad recap pods that have these titles have already been taken, I'm sure.
I'm sure it already exists. I've done zero research.
While Brian goes through the next bit of TV.
Yeah, so something else that's coming out this week to Netflix is Yakamoz S245. So this is coming out on Wednesday. And the plot is, after disaster strikes Earth, a marine biologist on a submarine research mission must fight to survive with the crew as a conspiracy comes to light. So this is actually part of an extended universe from writer Jason George. He did another show called Into the Night that came out in 2020, I believe. I think these are based in Turkey, these shows. Netflix, as usual, branching out globally for their content. This trailer looks pretty cool. I had never heard of this guy, of Jason George, or any of his other work, but this looked like a fun little thriller, nice sci-fi concept, and it is the spinoff. So it seems like it's self-contained. Don't really need to watch the previous show. But if you get hooked into this one, you can go back. And I think the other one takes place above ground. It gives a little bit of context to what has happened to drive everyone under the ocean. So yeah, that is Yakamoz S245 coming to Netflix this Wednesday. Coming out this Friday, we have They Call Me Magic coming to Apple TV Plus. So this follows the accomplishments and global impact of Irvin Magic Johnson, both on and off the court, featuring interviews with him, his family members, and others. It's directed by Rick Famuyiwa. And we talked about it a little bit off mic before this. Magic Johnson, iconic basketball player, played on the Dream Team for the Olympics. Was one of the most high-profile celebrities who publicly struggled with HIV and survived it. Was just a very iconic character who has done a lot for his community as well, given back a lot. And this documentary, we talked a little bit about The Last Dance when I brought it up off mic. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that sort of documentary necessarily, maybe more so less about the drive to play and more about him as a person, I think.
Right.
But this looks like very heartwarming and inspiring stuff. And I'm sure there's a lot that we don't know about Magic Johnson, even though he's been in the public eye for decades at this point. So yeah, that's They Call Me Magic on Apple TV Plus coming out this Friday. Moving into some movies, we have a new animated feature called The Bad Guys coming to theaters. So this is a DreamWorks animation picture, and it's directed by Pierre Perifel in his feature directorial debut from a screenplay by Ethan Cohen, and is loosely based on a children's book by Aaron Blabey, who is executive producing as well. It stars Sam Rockwell, Mark Maron, Anthony Ramos, Craig Robinson, and Awkwafina. So star cast, and they're playing a group of criminal animals who, upon being caught, pretend to attempt to reform themselves as model citizens. And will it take? Will they leave their life of crime behind? Who knows? But this movie looks cute. It doesn't look like it's going to blow any minds, but looks like a fun little animated romp, and is probably going to be one that we watch for movie night at some point in the near future with my family. So that's The Bad Guys that'll be in theaters this Friday. All right, moving on to some stuff that we will be talking more about next week and in the coming month. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, the long-awaited. I think I reported at some point like a year and a half ago that this movie was coming out.
Yeah, in the middle of the pandemic. I am pretty sure at some point, Brian, you had an excellently compromised and thoroughly detailed list of everything that was coming out, like even amidst all the chaos of the pandemic. And there was one week, I'm pretty sure, where you said that The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent was coming out, and Christian and I couldn't find a trailer for this thing anywhere.
Yeah.
But
this is my
it's
bad.
here.
I've gotten better. I don't talk about anything without a trailer now.
I don't know. That's not a statement on your work.
No, I think
this thing was non-existent for a long time.
I think he called you a schmuck, Brian.
I mean,
that is not what happened just now.
It's not unfair. It's not unfair.
Brian does an exceptional amount of excellent work for this podcast.
Especially for a schmuck.
Oh my God.
It's the sandwich of, it was a great list until you fucked it up. But you did great work.
You guys are just putting words in my mouth now.
Schmuck.
No, but this movie, was originally set to come out over a year ago, I think, and is finally out. We're doing a whole Nicolas Cage month in May. Nicolas Mage, for those of you who enjoy a good pun. The premise of this, actor Nick Cage, who is playing a fictionalized version of himself, begrudgingly accepts a $1 million offer to attend the birthday of a billionaire superfan. That's all I'm going to say about this. It's played by Pedro Pascal. So you have Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal playing off each other. You also have Sharon Horgan, Ike Barinholtz, Alessandra Mastronardi, Jacob Scipio, Neil Patrick Harris, and Tiffany Haddish, who are also starring in this movie. It's directed by Tom Gormican and co-written with Kevin Etten. And this movie looks amazing. It did incredible when it premiered at Sundance recently. This is, as of right now, Nick Cage's highest rated movie of all time, which is kind of mind blowing because he's been in a lot of acclaimed films. Has won an Oscar for one of his performances in Leaving Las Vegas. I am so excited to get into Nicolas Cage month and to see this. What did you guys think of this trailer? And how are you feeling about The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent?
I can't wait to see this movie. My wife can't wait to see this movie. I recently listened to an interview with Nicolas Cage from Collider, and he was saying how this movie was the hardest role he's ever had to play. Not only because he's playing kind of like a caricature of himself, and it was difficult, like, finding the line, of realism in the character, but he's also a producer on this film. So for a man that tends to typically not watch his work after he's completed it, he had to pull double duty here and actually go in and kind of detach part of his brain and watch himself on camera for the first time in a very long time. So I think a lot of love and effort was put into this movie. I can't wait to see him play off of Pedro Pascal, and the rest of the cast looks excellent as well. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I think Pedro Pascal should have played Nicolas Cage. Or Nicolas Cage should have played Pedro Pascal's character, and they should have deep faked Pedro Pascal's face into all of Nick Cage's performances.
Oh
but
my gosh.
Hollywood isn't bold enough to take those types of chances. No, I'm very excited for this film as well. I've been hearing nothing but good things. I'm a huge Nick Cage fan, so like even when he's bad, he's the most interesting. Like even when he's in a bad movie, he's like the best part of a bad movie.
Even when he's bad, he's still Nick Cage.
He's still Nick Cage, baby. So I'm very excited for this film. That's what I gotta say about that.
Yeah,
I'm excited,
so
dude.
That's The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which we will be covering in 2 weeks, I believe.
Correct.
Beginning of next month. So what we're covering next week, The Northman, Bobby Eggy's latest feature, his third.
We've gone from Robbie Eggies to Robert Eggies to Bobby Eggies to Robert Egerton. What is this man's real name?
It's Bobby Eggies.
It's Bobby Eggies now.
So Robert Eggers' third feature film, his biggest budget to date by far, The Northman, is coming out. So the plot of this movie, Prince Amleth is on the verge of becoming a man when his father is brutally murdered by his uncle who kidnaps the boy's mother. 2 decades later, he's a Viking who raids Slavic villages and soon meets a seeress who reminds him of his vow to save his mother, kill his uncle, and avenge his father.
The tale is old as time.
Oh, yes. This is written and directed by Robert Eggers and co-written with Sean, who is someone who's done a lot of work with Bjork, who is also in this movie, and recently wrote the movie from last year, Lamb, which was not one of my favorite movies of the year, but definitely a very interesting piece, and I'm excited that he was involved in this project. It has literally every actor in it. Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, Claes Bang, Anya Taylor-Joy, Ethan Hawke, Bjork, and Willem Dafoe. So a handful
as
of
well
Robert
as
Eggers
6 or 7
staples.
Spider-Men.
Oh, yes, of course. Obviously, they're going to be coming in. So this was filmed in Ireland. It looks absolutely incredible. I actually only just this week saw the latest trailer for this that leaned in a little more on the action. And there are some moments in this that had me just nearly jumping out of my seat. Like, this looks incredible. I'm a little disappointed from what I've heard from Robert Eggers about, and we'll get into this a little bit when we cover it, but I guess he had a lot of problems with the studio in terms of the editing process, and this movie may not be as close to his vision as his other couple of movies because of the size of the budget and the amount of studio involvement here. But I've heard a lot of good things from critics who have seen this movie, and I'm still very much looking forward to it. Chris, what did you think of the trailer for this one? Obviously, we're going to deep dive next week.
The movie looks epic, Brian. I'm ready to see it. And it is unfortunate, the things that we've heard in terms of like the studio taking the film away from him and doing a lot of the editing themselves. But I'm ready.
Yes.
We'll probably get a director's cut, especially if it like tanks, and then the studio has to find a way to make its money up. May get a director's
Hopefully
cut
that's not the case.
Sooner than later. I think we'll get one regardless, especially after seeing the Lighthouse. What's funny is we'll talk about it more, but from seeing The Witch, The Lighthouse, The Witch was like, in interviews, he's like, yeah, we actually would have got more coverage, but we didn't have enough money, They're like, did you intentionally shoot it really, like, plain? And he's like, no, I just didn't have any money. And for The Lighthouse, you can see that it doesn't seem there was a whole lot left on the cutting room floor. That film probably could have used a studio trim, in actuality, as much as I like that movie. So I'm interested to see it.
I've heard that there were some things that the studio actually forced him to remove from The Lighthouse, but we can get into that.
45 minutes more of Robert Pattinson cranking it to a silicone mermaid.
There used to be you're not too far off, but we'll get into it.
Look forward to Wednesday's episode to hear more of them juicy deets. Yeah, I'm excited. I've not seen a trailer yet. I'm just really excited. My biggest question mark is Bjork, who I know has done some acting before, right? This isn't her first real acting. Yes. But Bjork is a very specific person. For those who don't know, Bjork is an Icelandic musician / actor, and when she talks, she sounds like this, and she talks about her music like this and what she wants to do. And I can't not hear that when I think of Bjork. So that'll be interesting. Very prolific. Same story with Bjork that I had with David Bowie.
She makes music and I respect it.
Exactly.
She's definitely put out albums. She's released them, and you can listen to them.
I'm ready to be blown away by Bjork. I'm ready to be Bjorked. Bjork me.
Well, if
You got to take me
like
to dinner
get
before I
Bjorked,
do anything like that, Christian.
please show me a good time.
Take you out to a nice locally sourced Icelandic co-op.
Yeah.
Maybe watch some Fire Saga. Why
This
am I
dish-
blanking on the
This dish, you're
name of
talking
the-
about Eurovision Song Contest?
Eurovision?
Song contest, the story of Fire Saga.
Story of Fire Saga. Please enjoy this kale leaf smothered in a...
I can't anymore. All right, bit's over.
So yeah, that's Robert Eggers' latest film that we'll be covering next week, The Northman. That'll be in theaters this Friday, and that'll wrap it up for the news this week.
Robbie Eggies. Brian, thank you so much for the wacky news. So wacky. Let's roll right into my favorite part of the show, which is Quick Hits. Quick Hits is that part of the show where we talk about what we've been consuming in the world of pop culture. Chris, I'm very excited. You saw what could be Jim Carrey's last performance on screen in
possible.
cinema.
Wild.
You saw Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
I did.
That
I did see
sentence.
Sonic the Hedgehog too.
Amuses me more than you can
Well,
ever
to be
imagine.
fair, and I'll get into my thoughts. To be fair, Jim Carrey has said it's been one of his favorite roles to play. So if this is how he wants to go out, then that's that man's choice, right? And to be honest, it's an absolutely fantastic performance. So to get into some of the details, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is directed by Jeff Fowler. It stars Ben Schwartz as Sonic the Hedgehog, Jim Carrey as Dr. Eggman, Idris Elba as Knuckles, Colleen O'Shaughnessy as Tails, and then, of course, James Marsden and many others as well. And, you know, we dedicated a full episode to the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie. We brought in friend of the podcast, Danny Lopez. I actually ended up seeing this in theaters with Danny Lopez. He's a giant
It was the
Sonic
last
fan.
movie that we all saw before the pandemic started.
It was, I think Brian may have, Brian was seeing movies during the pandemic, but it was certainly the last movie that I saw in
snuck off to
theaters.
the movies during like the month lockdown.
But he was safe about it, and I appreciate that.
He was safe about it. He killed
Yeah,
everybody.
the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie,
That schmuck.
as I've said many times on this show, could have been the last movie I saw in theaters had we never gone back to movie theaters, but thankfully it wasn't. And I really enjoyed that first Sonic movie. It was a lot of fun. The dynamic between Ben Schwartz and James Marsden's great. You know, it's the banter between him and Jim Carrey's fantastic. And a lot of those same elements are here in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So I think if you're a fan of that original movie, you're going to like a lot of what Sonic the Hedgehog 2 offers. However, I will say this. One of the strengths of the first Sonic the Hedgehog, at least for me, is that it's a movie that's under 2 hours long, which I think it should be. You know, it's a children's movie. It's dedicated to a video game character. Like, the more concise you make that film, I would say that that's one of the reasons why it's so good. It's a very compact narrative. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 comes in at over 2 hours long. And while... Right. There's a lot more action in this one. We're introducing more characters like Tails and Knuckles. So I understand the mentality to make it a little bit longer. We got a larger adventure in terms of scope for this one. So I can see how they wanted to expand the runtime a little bit. But truth be told, while a lot of the strengths of the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie are in this sequel, there's really about 30 minutes worth of material that has nothing to do with Sonic the Hedgehog that I think could have been cut from this film. There was actually one point in the middle of the movie where I turned to Danny and I said, what the fuck does this have to do with Sonic the Hedgehog? The sequence was so long, and I'm not going to go into details because you guys haven't seen it yet, but it does involve a lot of like the side human characters. And it was like 20, 25 minutes long, maybe. And I was just like reaching this point where it's like, okay, can we get back? This literally isn't progressing the story further in any productive way. Like, can we please just get back to the crux of what this movie's about? And that's kind of disappointing. You know, James Marsden and the other human characters aren't as critical to the main narrative of this film, but potentially maybe there's something in their contracts that require they have at least a certain amount of screen time. I'm not quite sure. But they just weren't really necessary for this particular movie. And for that reason, I still like the first Sonic more than this sequel. There's a lot of awesome stuff packed into this movie for Sonic the Hedgehog fans, a lot of really fun Easter eggs. And I would say that, 85-90% of the film is really, really enjoyable. When it comes out on VOD or streaming, I'm going to rewatch it with my wife because she really liked the first one as well. So it's not stopping me from watching it again. And even coming out of the theater, I said that I would absolutely watch a third one. So it's not a make or break. I just think they could have been a little more concise when it came to cutting things out of the movie. Granted, it would have meant possibly cutting entire scenes with actors out of this film that weren't necessarily critical to the overall narrative of the film. But yeah, it was a fun time. I think kids are really going to like this movie. But because of that extra stuff, I definitely don't think it's as good as the first Sonic movie.
I thought it was completely. I haven't seen it yet, but they introduced a character named Chronic the Snoop Dogg. Am I correct?
It was a weird introduction.
Really dragged.
Chronic the Snoop Dogg.
Had an extra 30 minutes content. Brian, you had a real follow up.
I was just curious if there was any egregious advertisements in this movie that were notable.
Brian?
Yes?
Oh my God.
Oh yes. I'm so excited.
There's a portion of the movie, and I don't think it's spoiling too much, but that general does come back into the plot of the film, and it's actually during this segment that I think that could be cut. Mm-hmm. And James Marsden refers to him as the Olive Garden guy. And there is like maybe a 5 to 10 second dialogue that involves Olive Garden. So I don't necessarily think that it's still a sponsor of the film based on how long they discussed it. But for some reason, they felt that it was important enough from the first one to bring back as a bit.
Incredible.
But they do mention the Olive Garden guy in this movie.
Wait, when you say the general, you mean the insurance guy?
No. There's like a general from the first movie. In the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
The insurance general comes in and is an animated character.
Go to the general and save some coin.
Wow. I was like, wow, their product placement is getting pretty extreme.
Locally.
They're not hiding it. They're certainly not hiding it. But yeah, it's not as egregious as the first movie, Brian, but it is here.
I quite enjoyed the product placement. And, because I'm not going to Sonic the Hedgehog for like, you're taking me out of the reality of the film. So bring it on. Pay for that movie. They had to pay all those animators to redo them. I guess they didn't need that much cash in. Yeah, that much making up for revenue.
Someone on Twitter referred to this movie as The Godfather Part 2 of the Sonic franchise. And I would say that it's more like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Secret of the Ooze to the Sonic franchise in terms of like quality of sequels. But yeah, it's definitely not Godfather Part 2.
Here's the secret of the ooze. It's jism.
All right. Oh, God.
It's turtle jizz.
Relevant for the movie we're talking about on Wednesday.
Quite. All right, cool. I got a jizz joke out of the way. Awesome, we're on track here. So that's Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in theaters now. Chris says, 2 hours might be a little long for a Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Brian, I'm seeing you saw this small indie film by a Francis Coppola. And you got to see that in theaters. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so the conversation, it's something that I had, when I was up in New York last year, I saw at an independent theater, they were having a screening for this the next week. And I honestly had never even really heard of this movie. It stars Gene Hackman, written and directed by Francis Ford Coppola. And it was a quick trailer that was really intriguing for me. Reading up a bit on it, it's very inspired by Antonioni's Blow Up, which is a movie that I was able to see a few years back at a local screening. And yeah, it basically follows a private surveillance man who has his own business and does contracting for surveillance. And he records something that he thinks may have implications, and he starts digging into it and starts to get involved in something that he quickly maybe gets in over his head or doesn't realize that what he's getting into. This movie was really, really great. it starts off with this incredible shot from above of a basically like a town square where people are just moving. You can't really see anything specifically. And we get further and further down, and we end up following a mime who is kind of like, and we're still looking from above, and we see a mime who's going through a bunch of talking to different people, like following people, mimicking them, and eventually get to Gene Hackman's character, and it puts us in the scene. And this is the operation. This is a con that they're doing to get audio from two people who are talking and walking around this. So we see this whole setup. You basically have like a sniper looking thing and all this audio equipment, people on the ground and in cars nearby to try and get this whole thing. And it's just incredibly well done in highlighting how this audio equipment works, where the sound design is really well done, because you see how easily this stuff gets messed up and how you have to tinker with it later to kind of rework the sounds and see what you're hearing. So the whole movie is basically him listening to this tape over and over, and the layers of it as he learns more, as he does more investigating, gets a little sketched out by the people who hired him, and this leads to him maybe not wanting to hand the tapes over. We learn about bad experiences he's had in the past with the implications of the stuff that he records and what the people who he gives it to use it for. And it's also just this story about this man who can't trust anyone. He has a girlfriend who knows nothing about him because of the job that he's in. He just feels like he can't open up to anyone. And we also kind of see all the other people in private surveillance who know of him. He's kind of like this widely known, almost famous guy in the industry because he makes all of his own equipment. So there are a lot of elements to this. The plot is not super far reaching. It's kind of small at the end of the day, but I think it's a really great kind of character study and just a beautiful take on, I don't know. I think maybe most people don't realize, I know I don't often think about, you obviously think of like things like intelligence services, like the CIA or the FBI or something like this. But the fact that private surveillance companies exist and the implications legally and otherwise of this kind of stuff are vast, and the potential for it has only grown exponentially in the modern world. So this movie felt as relevant as it ever has to me. Well, this is the first time I'm seeing it, but it feels like it's as relevant as it's ever been, even today, looking at it, though they are using analog tech. So yeah, The Conversation, widely acclaimed, well-known movie, but it was my first time. And yeah, it's on Paramount Plus and Epix. If you guys have that, I was lucky enough to see a screening of it.
I was going to say, did you finally get Paramount Plus, Brian?
I have not yet. No. Yeah. I wanted to look it up to let the listeners and watchers know where they could check it out if they wanted to.
That's very courteous of you. We're also using the word watchers, which is our preferred nomenclature for our, as Chris says, viewers. Schmuck. That's very cool going back in. Paramount Plus, Brian's waiting for that Halo series to finish up so you can watch all of Halo.
Die Hard.
Can't wait.
So yeah, that's The Conversation. I also was able to see in theaters. This is a first run of You Won't Be Alone. So this is written and directed by Goran Stolevsky in his directorial debut. It stars Numi Rapace, Ana Maria Marinka, Alice Englert, Carlota Cata, and Felix Maritod. Apologize about pronunciation. I don't know how much I want to say about this movie. It's the general plot synopsis kind of gives stuff away. I would recommend this movie if you're into slow burn horror. It's gorgeously shot, almost nearly like Terrence Malick levels of just filming nature and beautiful voiceover. Our main character pretty much doesn't talk throughout the course of the movie, although people are talking around them. So there's just all internal monologue that is kind of this progressive take on life. Our main character kind of starts hidden away from society in a cave because of some issues that have happened in her childhood with her mother. She feels like she's threatened and wants to hide her from the community. And she eventually branches out. And the movie is kind of about her exploring and finding out what it means to be human. in the pros and cons of that and how you deal with things. And as someone who is largely mute, dealing with all the perceptions that come with that, it is supernatural. It is kind of gory at times. If you read the plot, I'll just get into it a little bit here. The basic plot is this girl becomes a witch through a certain situations, and basically is able to swap bodies with people by like killing them, and kind of takes their form. So throughout the course of this movie, we see her in many different characters' forms, discovering life and figuring out what it means to be human and alive in this time. And also learning about the witch who kind of turned her and the backstory there as well. I think this movie is great for directorial debut, especially. It has a lot of really beautiful language. It's largely in Macedonian, I believe, so it's subtitled. And I'm sure the language was gorgeous, even translated. So I'm sure in the original Macedonian, it's even more beautiful and eloquent. But yeah, I quite enjoyed this movie. It's probably not going to be like a top 10 for me, but it's just a beautiful slow burn that if you're into this sort of movie, it's got a lot to offer, I would say.
Very cool. That is You Will Not Be Alone. Do I have that right?
It's You Won't Be Alone.
You Won't Be Alone. Will not. It's the contracted
version.
Oh, I know all about contractions. Trust me.
I bet you do.
Listen to that. Very cool. Thanks for pointing those two things out. That's The Conversation, which is on Paramount Plus, and You Won't Be Alone in theaters now. That description was very interesting, Brian. It reminded me of a Freaky Friday weaponized, or a Captain Ginyu type situation.
Yeah.
From Dragon Ball, for those who don't know.
Everybody knows who
what Christian's
Captain
talking
Ginyu.
about.
Oh, of the Ginyu Force. Sorry, my bad.
Yes,
clears things up.
Ginyu Force.
Obviously.
Very cool. So, what have I been watching? Well, Daddy over here. I can call myself Daddy now, which is a lot of fun. Daddy over here got himself.
But should you?
Irrelevant. Bought himself a new TV. Very exciting. I'll talk more about it in our review of The Lighthouse and as the month goes on. But I'm on the OLED bandwagon, which thank goodness, because my phone's had an OLED screen for like 3 or 4 years. So just such a degradation in quality going to my really shitty Samsung TV. They're low-end Samsung TV, to be fair. But
welcome to the club, by the way.
So thank you so much. Happy to be here. Brian, we can't wait till you join. Those blacks are so inky. The inky blacks are so good. So anyway, I've been enjoying quite a lot of games, quite a lot of movies in the past few days as my parental leave comes to an end, and I'm just trying to pack in as much entertainment as possible when my baby's sleeping. But one of the things I wanted to point out, because I've just been playing so much, but this is, I think, very interesting, and I'm a couple years late to this bandwagon, is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, which is a very interesting, me, I'm the video game guy. But, growing up, I had a Gateway computer, and my dad, one of the only games that he liked playing was Flight Simulator. And I eventually got off that, and I discovered Roller Coaster Tycoon, which was like my favorite game as a kid. But one game that I tried to play, because it was just the only PC game that my dad had purchased, was Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I remember being so frustrated, but spending hours trying, and I could never take off. I could never land. Like, I couldn't do shit, but I thought it was so cool that you could pick like a jet fighter and do all this stuff, even though the graphics were literally like blue is the sky. You have gray for the runway, some green for grass, and some strips for like the center of the landing strip.
I'm sorry to interject here really quick. I also used to play this game when I was a kid, and all I remember is like briefly taking off and then immediately combusting on the ground.
Because it is a true sim, right? And you have to do things like disengage your flaps, turn off the parking brake, elevate the landing gear, adjust the trim, make sure you maintain the throttle that's necessary for altitude climb and all this other stuff. And I was a kid, so it's and my dad didn't instruct me how to do it. He didn't teach me how to play it. So thanks, Dad. So what ended up happening was my father came over with my mother to see my new baby boy. And I wanted to play a video game that my dad would like. So I'm like, oh, Dad, do you know where video games are at yet? Because, he doesn't play any games or anything. And I started talking about Microsoft Flight Simulator, the new one, because I knew about it, but I'd never played it. And he's like, oh, that sounds cool. We should play that. And I'm like, well, I don't have it. And then I realized I have Game Pass, and it is free on Game Pass. Now,
that's excellent.
It is 100 gigs, so it took a while to download.
Wow.
But we got it downloaded. I got it installed. my father was blown away. I was blown away. So for those who don't know, what's really cool about the latest version of Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is available for PC and all the Xbox Series and Series S and Series X, is that what it does, not only is it like gorgeous graphics and has like HDR and, it has all the great flight sim stuff of, having to, you can, what's cool is that you can choose your level of hard. You can either have it as like, I press go and then I point up or down to fly, or you can go to various levels of, I have to make sure I, flood the engine and turn the flaps off and, do all this, and make sure that you don't stall the plane and all this other stuff. And the really cool thing, though, despite all that, is that they take Bing's, because it's made by Microsoft, Bing's map data, like their entire arsenal of Earth map data, and they just copy and paste that into the game. So... and then up-res it a little bit, and then they go into like major cities and they'll add detail and stuff, so it's not just the 3Dified map data. But they take all that, and essentially what it means is that the entire Earth and all the airports on Earth are takeoffable and flyable. So you can literally plot, you can just go into the game. One of the game modes is, I want to fly from, Tampa, Florida to New York, or I want to fly from Alaska to San Francisco. And you can literally take a real-time version of that flight. Not only that, they take in real-time weather and air traffic data that happens real-time.
It's really cool.
Now, the whole game doesn't fit on this. How they do this is actually stream the data in. So it's using, it's part of a new, very exciting, I think, this is one thing that's tapping into it in a really cool way, mix of on console, on system, and cloud computing, because it's you have access to over 1.5 petabytes, which is 1.5 million terabytes or whatever of map data that streams into your computer via the internet. Very cool stuff. I took that flight from Anchorage to San Francisco, and I just put it on autopilot once I got airborne and the descent phase was over, or the ascent phase was over, which is really cool in Alaska because obviously it's like really high terrain, and it's just beautiful. And then just set that on autopilot, and then did the dynamic camera that just like pans around it, and just left that on while I was doing chores and taking care of my baby. I've gotten into this so much that I bought a flight stick. I bought the Thrustmaster 4 HOTUS for Xbox and PC. And I gotta tell you guys, I'm into flying. It is just such a cool concept. There's also challenges and landing challenges in structural flight. I will say I'm very disappointed with the Thrustmaster being like the premier, like economic, affordable flight stick for Xbox and PS4. They have a PS4 version. The build quality is pretty good, but the button mapping's all over the place, and you kind of have to dive deep because it'll say a button does one thing and it doesn't. And so there's a lot of unnecessary work, and it is plug and play, but it's not super great. And I found that across games, some games, even though they're like, this is a Thrustmaster, they won't map the buttons correctly. So that leaves a lot to be desired. But holy shit, I'm really into aviation now. And I'm
Christian, your transformation into a father is complete. You've reached your final form. Congratulations.
No, it's super cool, and it's a cool thing that like if my dad comes over, he'll love playing on the flight stick. He was so bad on the controller, like he just doesn't hold game pads. So he spent the longest time. There's like landing challenges, and one of them is in Nepal, and you're like landing on a really short runway in the middle of a mountain. Now you have like a small Cessna plane, so you don't really need that much landing stuff, and it goes relatively slow compared to like a jet. But he just could not land the plane. Bless his heart. And I landed it in like the second try. And he's like, how'd you do that? I'm like, you just learn how to use the controller. So
I've spent 30 years playing video games. That's how, Dad.
That helps.
The thing you used to yell at me about all the time?
and he starts going like, this is why they have the kids do the drones. I was like, yeah, probably. I don't know. It'd be pretty terrible. So anyway, that's Microsoft Flight Simulator. If you are interested in aviation and you have Xbox, like I think it's worth a try. Or if you have any like interest in that cool tech, like it is super, super fun. You have to kind of they do have those challenges. There's a little bit of make your own fun because it's a lot of just like, holy shit. And I was flying all over Orlando and Tampa in a F-18, which is something I can't actually do. So it was really cool to do that. Cool. That's Microsoft Flight Simulator, available for Xbox and PC. And it's on Game Pass. So it's pretty much a no-brainer if that sounds anything interesting to you. The second thing, I finished super pumped. The Battle for Uber. Now, there's a lot of these shows going on right now. This is a vibe we're in. They talked about a vibe shift happening, and I think this is the vibe right now of stuff. You've got The Dropout that is on... What is The Dropout on? I think it's on FX or Hulu, right? Something like that.
It's on Hulu.
Hulu, yeah.
Yeah, and I watched The Battle for Uber on on Hulu.
Uber's new streaming platform? Uber Plus?
On Hulu via Showtime. So you can do the Showtime add-on on either Amazon or your cable provider or Hulu.
It's called Vuber.
Or as Mike Kalanick once said, actually in real life, the founder of Uber said boober when he was asked about the sexism that was rampant at his company. Yeah, he said that. He's a very interesting person. I'm like, see, that's why I'm not a CEO, because I would jokingly say something like that, get in a whole lot of trouble. So, you got The Dropout. You've got the one about WeWork that's on Apple TV+. You've got the fictional ones like Billions and Secession that are a little adjacent to it, but you got a lot of these like tech company stories that are coming out like one after another about these stories in Silicon Valley. So it's right up my alley. I'm watching, to be fair, I'm watching all of them. And I haven't finished We Crash. But this is starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's based off the book of the same name written by Mike Isaac, which I also listened to that book after finishing the series. And it's a great companion piece. I think they work really well in tandem together. So it's not like one is better than the other. They're just kind of like more information on the book side. But it's so good to see Joseph Gordon-Levitt in things again. He had taken a break because he became a dad and took a lot of time off acting, and he's really kind of fully back into it. And this show is really interesting. It is like a mix of what I've seen with WeWork and The Dropout and all this stuff. And it's got like this element of Wolf of Wall Street in it, where it really has these big title cards. It's narrated by Quentin Tarantino. And they'll introduce like, these big figures in the story with these big like screen pauses and big letters come up and it's like, this is who this is. He's known as the big dick of investments in Silicon Valley. So that adds to a little cringiness to it, but also is insanely entertaining and moves at quite a pace. This is a limited series, which, as the Pop-O-Holics know, my favorite type of TV is limited series of I'm just asking you to watch this long thing. In my eyes, that's the real like novelization of the TV format. And it does hit the sweet spot of not overstaying its welcome. A lot of other talented people are in it as well. But I want to shout out one specifically, which is the person that plays Emil Michael, Babak Tofty. He plays a man who is Kalanick's right-hand man, the character played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's brought on to help him out and kind of gets corrupted by him over time. And both him and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character are just straight sociopaths. But the interesting line to walk is that Wolf of Wall Street one, which is like, you got to get us to empathize with the piece of shit character, but also realize that he's an asshole. And I think this movie or this TV show actually walks that line better than Wolf of Wall Street, in my opinion. I think that there's a lot of reckoning with the characters and everybody in his life that really put that in perspective. But a fascinating story. If you're interested in kind of these, what happens when you take a lot of brash individuals that are idolizing the likes of, Steve Jobs and these other, Jeff Bezos, these very brash, I say what I think and I'm very opinionated and I'm all about just market domination. And you inject billions of investor dollars into those people's like plans. It's a story that I think tells us a lot more about where we're at in our capitalistic society and how those things operate and what happens to you when you get super pumped about something and you get really focused on one thing. Very interesting show. I highly recommend it. I won't, if anybody says bad stuff about it, where they're like, well, I thought it was a juvenile, this could have been written better, this is a little ridiculous, I'd probably agree with you on all those points. I don't think it's a perfect show, but it was very entertaining. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's awesome, great supporting cast, and it doesn't overstay its welcome, which is the best compliment. I would say if this was 4 episodes longer, I'd probably be like, don't waste your time. So I really appreciate that it works well in that regard. Are you interested in any of these shows, guys? I mean, this is just for me. Is it all these people making these shows are just like, we know that Christian likes this stuff. Are any of these interesting to you when it comes to the kind of startup shows of tech gone awry?
I've heard of all of them. I just haven't gotten around to any of them. A lot of these shows are shows that my wife would also enjoy. So that's mostly why I'm kind of like holding off at this point, because she doesn't really want to watch any of them currently. But I'm sure I'll get around to some of them.
Yeah, I think this is just not really my type of show necessarily. But clearly there's a huge audience for it. So I'm happy that it's being made for people like you and everyone else who's clearly enjoying these. But yeah, I tend to, especially with TV that's not documentary, enjoy the pure fiction side of things, or like pseudo reality with like the Fargo that we've talked about before.
Yeah, and I feel that weird dissonance too. You quickly get over it once the show establishes itself, but you can't help but be like, these people are all still alive. And this happened like 10 years ago, and we're already making a TV show about it. It's weird. And there's characters and figures in it that are very prominent characters and figures still in today's world that is just kind of like jarring to see people do performances of. But I would highly recommend the book, Brian. I think it's a good, I think it's a really fascinating read. It's kind of that you're learning about something, and also it's just insane to see how the madness and the shit that they got away with. Just to kind of spoil it to you, Uber did so much sketchy shit to basically keep its cars running, like surveilled government agents of local places and lock them out of the system, like the public Uber app, so that they couldn't see that it was happening. Just like tagging
Holy
people.
cow.
Tapping into people's microphones and phones, and Uber drivers and passengers' phones and records and locations, and it's
Great stuff.
Great stuff. Yeah,
Good that they're still in business.
I was like, I knew I liked Lyft for a reason. I knew I was more of a Lyft guy. But anyway, so that's super pumped. The Battle for Uber, both the book and the TV show, I recommend. But for Brian specifically, read that book. It's a good book. Cool. That'll do it for quick hits. Let's wrap things up with community feedback.
Welcome back to the community feedback section, loyal viewers and listeners. In this portion of the show, we take care of some housekeeping for the Pop-O-Holics. We'll go over what we have coming up on our Throwback Thursday episode over on our YouTube channel. We'll typically go over any poll results that we have for the month. We don't have any this week, but look forward to a poll coming out at the end of the month. We're just waiting for the Northman to come out. And we'll also read any written 5-star reviews that we received from either Spotify or the Apple Podcast app. Considering, like I mentioned, we don't have any poll results and we don't have any new 5-star reviews, we're going to talk about our Throwback Thursday episode. For those that have been listening over the last couple weeks, we've been re-releasing our coverage of all the Star Wars films from 2019. When The Rise of Skywalker was about to come out, we went back and we watched every single Skywalker saga movie. And this week over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Pop-O-Holics, for those listening to the audio version of the show, we are going to be covering the first 2 films in what Christian has dubbed the Star Wars Disney Extended Universe. So that would be The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. And then, of course, the episode after this, we'll have our full discussion about The Rise of Skywalker from 2019. But as of this Thursday, head on over to our YouTube channel and check out that episode. If you're already here watching us on our YouTube channel, thank you, firstly. If you haven't subscribed, why not subscribe? Click that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future episodes here. And then, of course, please like the video. That'll help us hugely when it comes to YouTube's algorithm. But do you guys remember anything about our conversation about the Disney Extended Universe?
I think we had a moment. I haven't listened to it since it came out, but did we have a moment where like, what do you hope from Rise of Skywalker? Didn't we like?
I'm pretty sure we do.
And I'm pretty sure I was just like, just don't try to like fire back at Last Jedi. I was like, just like continue it from the point it went on, and J.J. Abrams it up, but like don't act like it didn't happen. And I was like, I think we got the worst of both worlds. It was a very interesting thing to hear what we wanted from that film. And,
if I remember correctly, by the time we recorded that episode, I actually opted out of that question because I
didn't want to
already
go
knew. Oh, yeah. In The Rise of Skywalker. So I just opted out. One of the things I remember from that episode, though, is that Christian loves porgs. And that always brings a smile to my face.
Bringing out the little one.
I don't remember the
there
noise,
he is.
the noise they make, but I think it's...
What's his name? What's that porg's name, Christian?
Porgy Pig.
Perfect. I love it. So anyway, that's going to do it for the community feedback section. Again, head on over to youtube.com/Pop-O-Holics if you're listening to this in our audio feed. We'll be happy to see you there. Christian, where else can our loyal listeners and viewers find us online?
Well, on both the YouTube and the podcast notes, you can click on the link tree and get a link to all of our bit to the YouTube or the podcast feed, as well as our social medias. We're very active on Twitter. We have those polls that run. You can email us. Did you want to talk about something that you saw? Do you have a quick hits for us, a quick review of something you've seen, or you have a comment on what we've seen or our themed months, or have any suggestions for that? Please reach out to us at popoholicscast@gmail.com. Again, it's Pop-O-Holics, as it's spelled in the feed, cast@gmail.com. We'd love hearing from you. But yeah, we got a Robbie Eggy month continuing.
Bobby Eggy
for Easter Eggers month, which is very exciting. We'll be talking about the Lighthouse this week, which I'm very excited to get into that conversation. So look forward to that. Gentlemen, where can people find more of your individual work on the internet?
Listeners and viewers, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, talking about all things nerdy, comic books, television, movies, video games, collectibles. If it's nerdy, I'm talking about it.
And you can find me on Twitter at True Pop-O-Holic.
And you can find my band at Midnight Satire on Twitter, as well as A Not So Serious Man streaming on your favorite streaming platform of choice, Apple Music, Spotify, all that stuff. Very cool stuff coming. News upcoming. Full EP will be out mid next month. That's the announcement right here. That's an announcement.
Very exciting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, finally coming out, which is very exciting, but more to come on that. Like, subscribe, and Chris, you don't tell the watchers to click on that subscribe button. You tell them to smash that fucker.
Smash the subscribe button.
I want you to smash it. Like I literally.
And then gingerly click on the notification bell.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
lightly.
Well, that'll
Don't want to
do
break it
for this weekly upload. We'll see you this Wednesday and next week on